This is the first third-party Unreal Engine 5 game using all of the big new features. We've got Nanite, Lumen, virtual shadow maps, all of it. And this is an RTX 4060 trying to play the game at 1080p Ultra. And you might take a look at the frame rate counter up there. In fact, I'll start a little benchmark run so we can see some average frame rate numbers, some 1% lows, all of that. And you can see that we are definitely not averaging 60 frames per second, even at 1080p Ultra settings. We could run back through here. Looks like we're averaging around 50. And again, I mean, there's some stuff going on, but a lot of this is just sort of kind of some corridors here. This scene looking out over here does look quite good. But yeah, so we're definitely averaging right around 51 FPS for that little run through. And I could show you the settings to confirm where we're at here. So again, we are at 1080p resolution and no DLSS upscaling at this point. The graphics menu, it's kind of interesting in this game. They do have this GPU and CPU allocation, but it's honestly just kind of nonsense. For example, something like, where was it? Anisotropic filtering, which really does not have a large impact on the frame rate or the workload on the CPU or the GPU. Every time you notch through these, it says it has a large bump. So like I could turn off anisotropic filtering, and that now apparently massively reduces my CPU load and my GPU load. And yet, with those settings on, our frame rate has changed by 1, 2, and we're still GPU limited, not CPU limited. In other words, I thought this was a cool feature. I reported on it in another video, having these CPU and GPU budgets. And I think it's still a very cool idea if it could be implemented well. But as you can see, many of the changes here don't really do a heck of a lot for performance. Now, I will change these graphics settings, but first I will show, how about we kick on some DLSS? So let's turn on DLSS Quality, and this game does even feature DLSS Frame Generation, which we can kick on here. However, we do run into a bit of a problem. Notice as I move my cursor side to side, watch the targeting reticle, okay? Do you guys see that the targeting reticle in motion is, it leaves this ghosting trail on either side of it, which is really, really obnoxious while you're trying to aim. So unfortunately, unless that gets patched out, I really don't think I can recommend using DLSS frame generation to improve performance. It's pretty important to have a good targeting reticle when it's a shooting game. So that's really unfortunate. Hopefully that goes ahead and gets patched, but that's where we're at right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and kick frame generation off. If we're using DLSS Quality at 1080p Ultra settings, we're now rendering at an internal resolution of, I believe, 720p, and then upscaled through the DLSS algorithm. I will reset the frame rate counters here. We are now over 60 frames per second, but again, we are rendering below a 1080p resolution and upscaling it, and that's never perfect. By the way, if you're noticing a bunch of screen tearing or anything like that, that's because I am capturing this at 60 frames per second, but I am not doing a VSync locked 60 frames per second, so that you get screen tearing in the image. You wouldn't see that on a variable refresh rate display or if you cap to 60 frames per second. Anyway, so you do see that DLSS can definitely kick in and kind of save the day on performance. However, that does mean you are dealing with the non-native upscaling. So, I haven't had a chance to do a lot of side-by-side of exact, looking for image quality artifacts on DLSS here, but in general at 1080p, I'd rather not upscale if I didn't have to. Works a lot happier with it at higher resolutions. Speaking of which, if you were curious about the 1440p performance, we could switch over to that for just a second before we change graphic settings. I'm delaying changing the graphic settings. I know a lot of you guys are like, why are you just testing ultra settings? Because I'll have to restart the game to lower the graphic settings. So we're gonna test out 1440p. And maybe before we kick on DLSS, we'll look at, okay, 1440p ultra. It's looking like in this scene, we are hitting right about 34 frames per second, standing still, looking out at that. And if we do our little run through, we are definitely getting dips below 30 at times, although kind of averaging in the 30-something range. So that's how we do at native resolution on the RTX 4060. Don't worry, we will absolutely test out some other GPUs and all of that, and some other settings. Now, if we did want to upscale, at 1440p, I don't mind upscaling quite so much. So if we did want to stay on the ultra graphic settings at 1440p, we're not going to change to borderless windowed. We're going to kick on DLSS. There's the button I was looking for. Looks like DLSS Quality does boost us significantly. We're now around 50-ish. Let's do another little run here, see how that holds up in motion. And again, there's some big fights in this game with a lot of effects on screen and everything like that. So don't take this exact scene I'm testing as the worst case scenario. I just played through a little bit to get to where it kind of opens up a little bit past the tutorial section. That's about it. But yeah, it's looking like we're hanging out around that low 50s kind of mark. So, ultra DLSS quality, certainly very playable on a very variable refresh rate screen. And if you did want to kick on DLSS a bit more aggressively, we could get to, looks like right about 60 frames per second if we use DLSS balanced at 1440p. Although it looks like in motion here, we definitely get dips below that at times. Okay, if you guys let me turn off the record, I'll just edit it back in. I'm going to drop down to low settings and see how we do. All right, I've now set everything to low. So this, and back to 1080p resolution. So just to show you, we're at 1080p. I've turned DLSS off. And the graphics settings, I just slid everything to low. There actually is no graphics presets in this game. You have to adjust every single setting individually. So everything is on either low or off or render target pool size down to 200. I've slid it all the way to the left. So RTX 4060, 1080p, low settings, looking out at this, vista. We're at just a little over 60 FPS at times, kind of bounces around a little bit depending on what's going on screen. Let's kick on the benchmark counter and do a little run through here. Did see a little dip below 60 there for a second. Some of the scenes doing better. Running through here, got some stuff going on. All right, running back. Looks like our average is kind of in the upper mid 60s. We do bounce around a little bit. The 1% lows down around 50, which isn't great to see. And I'm on a high-end CPU platform here with the 7800X3D, so I don't think we'll blame that. So it's looking at 1080p low settings. We're right around a 69 nice FPS average running through that benchmark run, which I've got to say is pretty disappointing. 1080p low settings on the brand new RTX 4060. I don't know, that doesn't bode well to me for what it says about, Unreal Engine 5 games pushing all the features and what kind of performance we'll be getting. If we did kick on DLSS quality on top of that, we do now get a higher refresh rate experience, though. Looks like we're pushing around 100 frames per second, and we could do the little run again. So standing still, we were around 100, but it looks like running around here, we are dipping definitely below that at times. Bounces around, but yeah, 90s, 100-ish, that type of thing. So yeah, if you're willing to go down to low settings and kick on DLSS quality, you can get a pretty good high refresh rate experience going here. And I will say that the low settings in this game compared to what low settings might look like in some other games, don't seem to look too terrible or anything. But just saying that there's, I don't know, doesn't feel great. I think we should take a quick look at this at 1440p, and then we should also try out some other GPUs. Maybe look at like a 6700 XT from AMD, see how AMD is doing in this game. Okay, so this is 1440p low settings with DLSS quality on. So 1440p low with DLSS quality, looks like we are around 70, kind of looking over that scene, but as we get into motion here, looks like we're dropping, into the upper 60s. But again, this is 1440p low settings with DLSS quality turned on. If we go ahead and turn DLSS quality off, so this is native 1440p, with everything turned down as low as it can possibly go. Yeah, looks like we are definitely below 60 frames per second. Down in the 40s here, 50s, looking out over this scene, down in kind of the 40s. So yeah, looks like at 1440p native with everything turned down as low as it can go, the 4060 is not able to hit 60 frames per second, but DLSS can get you there when combined with it. Let's look at the RX, well actually, you know what, let's actually look at how a 3080 does, and then I'll switch to some AMD GPUs. All right, I put in the RTX 3080 12GB version, which is kind of between the original 10GB version and the 3080 Ti in terms of performance, and does have the 12GB like the Ti model. Hey, anyway, we're still at low settings, low and off on everything. And we're at 1440p resolution, native, no DLSS. And yeah, it looks like 1440p low, staring out at this scene, is bouncing around the 60-something FPS range. Let's kick on a little benchmark and run through the area a little bit. Yeah, it's looking like the RTX 3080 is roughly a 1440p low GPU if you want to get 60 FPS natively. Interesting. Now, again, I think at 1440p, DLSS generally does look pretty good at the quality setting, so we can kick that on here real quick. So DLSS quality right there, and reset the frame rate counter. Looks like that did get us a nice healthy boost up there around 100-ish right now, staring out at this scene and running around. Yeah, so we can get a high refresh rate experience at 1440p upscaled, at the quality setting at low settings on the RTX 3080. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the 1080p results maybe at low settings before we actually kick everything up to ultra and see how we do. So 1080p, let's turn off upscaling. If I'm using an RTX 3080 at 1080p, I don't think I want to be upscaling here. Looks like we lost the image quality here for a second. Let me fix that recording for you just 1 second. Okay, I think we're good. All right, so we are now at 1080p resolution, no DLSS, low settings. Yeah, looks like we're right around that kind of 100-ish FPS mark. Looking out at the scene and running through here, kind of, yeah, similar sorts of numbers. And of course, we could also actually take a look at 4K resolution before we adjust the graphics settings. I think a lot of people did buy a 3080 for 4K GPU, anticipating most likely some need for upscaling and tweaking of settings. So here we're looking at, this is 4K native, but at low settings, and it looks like we're kind of hanging around in the 40s or so. So it looks like you're not going to be getting a good experience at native 4K resolution, even down at low settings. Let's hope DLSS quality can maybe at least bump us up to something near 60 frames per second. Yeah, looks like it's getting us right around there. So it looks like around 4K 60 low settings using DLSS Quality is the result we're getting there. All right, I'm interested in what happens if I kick everything back up to Ultra and see how things go. So I'll do that and restart the game and edit it back in for you. All right, we've now turned everything up to Ultra. This is 1440p again, and no DLSS enabled. We could take a look at the graphic settings again, slid everything over to Ultra, and 1440p, no DLSS. It's looking like we are definitely not going to hit 60 FPS at 1440p Ultra on the RTX 3080. Looks like running around, it's bouncing around the upper 40s, low 50s or so, stuff like that. It's like 1% lows are kind of in the upper 30s. So yeah, definitely not going to be a native 1440p Ultra 60 frames per second experience. But we could go ahead and kick on DLSS before we try out other resolutions. So 1440p Ultra DLSS Quality does seem to give us a bit of a boost here. We're up close to 80 FPS, kind of in the upper 70s, running around again. And away we go. All right, so yeah, it looks like on the RTX 3080, as long as you're willing to use DLSS Quality, the Ultra preset is not going to be a complete disaster, at least in this scene that I'm testing here. Again, I've not had time to really play through the whole game and take a look at which areas are more demanding than others. I'm also not really looking at CPU scaling here. It's possible you could be CPU limited on lower end hardware. I think that's going to be beyond the scope of what I have time for in this video. Let's go ahead and look at 1080p Ultra without upscaling and see where we're at with that. Right, looks like 1080p Ultra, no upscaling, kind of in the 70s it looks like. So definitely playable 1080p Ultra, although, you know, on a 3080 I think you'd kind of hope for a bit higher frame rates, but we're at least, you know, definitely playable. And then what if we tried out 4K resolution? So 4K Ultra. I don't think I adjusted that resolution correctly. Let's try that one more time. Apply the settings. Keep the changes. And 4K Ultra. Looks like we are down in the 30s. Which doesn't feel great. And let's go ahead and take a look at what if we kicked on DLSS Quality. DLSS Quality not getting us to 60 frames per second. How aggressive are we gonna have to be? So it looks like we could go DLSS balanced. Looks like we're still in kind of the upper 50s, looking out over that scene, so pretty close. Looks like it might require a DLSS Performance, which is an internal resolution of 1080p and then upscaled to 4K output to kind of get us going over the 60 FPS mark most of the time here at 4K Ultra. All right, so I'm curious if a 4090 is going to be very good at 4K here. So let's give that a shot and then try out some stuff from other, you know, AMD, maybe an Intel GPU, something like that. Well, you spend $1,600 on a GPU and you can't quite get 4K 60 at Ultra, it looks like. We could go ahead and run around here. This is 4K resolution. Ultra settings on the RTX 4090. Yeah, looks like we are fairly close to 60, but we're mostly down in kind of the mid 50s for a lot of that run through. That's a bit unfortunate. We could, of course, kick on DLSS Quality and start up a benchmark run here. And now it's actually looking like we're getting a fairly high refresh rate experience at 4K DLSS quality. And again, I do think DLSS quality does look quite good at 4K. So yeah, it does look like the RTX 4090 is pretty good to go here if you're willing to use quality upscaling at 4K resolution. Now, I would hope a GPU this powerful is not going to need upscaling at 1440p. Let's go ahead and check it out. Wait a second. Forgot to hit apply. There we go. All right, 1440p. Ultra settings. Hopefully I did show you that we are actually at the ultra settings. All right, ultra settings, 1440p. Looks like we are hanging out, in the 90s, 100-ish. Again, could be more demanding areas of the game, stuff like that, but at least in this area, looks like we are getting good experience on the 4090, which I sure as heck hope we would, given what it costs. So there is that. Should we bother testing it at 1080p? I guess I already plugged in the GPU, so it might as well be worth the couple seconds it'll take to look at it. So 1080p ultra settings on the RTX 4090. Looks like we're able to hit into the 130 something range. I'm actually curious if we'll hit any CPU limits here. But GPU utilization is still around 98%, although the power draw is going a bit low, so it's interesting. GPU might be waiting a little bit. All right, I think that's all we need to see on the 4090. Like I said, I think we should check out how we're doing on some other brands, maybe a 6700 XT from AMD. All right, installed the new driver. AMD did get a driver out specifically for this game, and we're at 1080p on the RX 6700 XT. Got everything cranked to ultra. Let's see if we can handle 60-ish FPS. Looks like we're right around 60 looking out at this screen. Let's kick on the benchmark counters and run through here. It looks like we definitely can dip below 60, but the average does seem to be getting us right about there. So it's looking like 1080p Ultra on the RX 6700 XT is getting us right around, 63 FPS running back and forth through that area. And this game does have FSR2 support, so I think we will check out FSR2 Quality, see how that boosts performance. Looks like getting us up to around 79-ish right here. Definitely feel like I'm getting, let's look at it in motion. Yeah, I really don't like using FSR2 at 1080p if I can help it. So it looks pretty good. It is usable, but I do think that in motion, especially, there's a little bit FSR2 can just look a little bit fizzly around the edges, especially things in motion. But looks like it did get our performance up to around 85 FPS there. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at 1440p Ultra before we drop settings and look at that. So let's turn FSR2 back off. So we'll look at native 1440p. So 1440p Ultra settings, no upscaling. Looks like we're right around 40-ish staring out over that scene. 42, let's kick on the benchmark counter. So yeah, looks like, you could play at 1440p Ultra. You're gonna be down in the 40s, so probably not an ideal experience at those settings. And as we get back up to the stairs here, we will try kicking on FSR2 Quality. I like it better at 1440p than I do at 1080p usually. Let's take a look at what it looks like here. Kicking on FSR2 Quality. All right, it's looking like we're slightly below 60 FPS. Now, this is the reference model of the 6700 XT running at its stock out-of-the-box settings, which also is why, this cooler is not the best either, so that's why the temp's a little bit high here. So, of course, are generally pretty overclockable and all that, so you could probably get a little more performance out of it too if you needed to. But yeah, it's actually looking like averaging a little over 60 FPS at 1440p Ultra with FSR2 Quality enabled. In motion, kind of looking at the objects in the distance, again, I do think that there's a bit of fizzling that you tend to get with FSR2, but it does look pretty passable and did get us a big performance boost. I'm going to go ahead and switch everything down to low, and I'll edit this back together after the restart. All right, we're now at 1440p, and everything is at native resolution, no FSR, and all these settings are on low, and I did restart the game. Looks like that's not going to be quite enough to get us up to 60 FPS at 1440p, so it's looking like a native locked 60, even down at the lowest settings, is not going to be possible on the 6700 XT. But we're actually pretty close to it. I mean, it's not a locked 60, but actually it's looking like by the time we get back up the stairs here, we are averaging right around 60 at the low settings. Now, let's go ahead and kick on FSR2 Quality to see what that does for us. So low settings 1440p with FSR2 Quality enabled. Looks like we are gonna be up in the 80s running through here. And when we get back around to the staircase, we'll take a quick look at what 1080p looks like here. Again, you could shoot and all that, and there could be a lot of enemies on the screen, and that can certainly lower the frame rate. So like I said, this is certainly not a worst case scenario that we're testing here, just the scene that I happen to be at right now. All right, let's go down to 1080p resolution, FSR off. So we're looking at basically, let's actually apply the settings here. So we'll be looking at 1080p native low settings on the 6700 XT, and looks like we're up in the upper 80s. Let's do a quick sprint here. All right, that is where we are at. All right, I'm exhausted. I'm going to go to bed, but if I get up early enough, I will try to get an Arc A750 tested. And if I don't, I'll at least try to edit this whole thing together and get the video out to you. And again, if I had more time and wasn't back to teaching and all that, I would like to see how the CPU scales on various systems and other areas in the game. But this is what I had time for. Still pretty interesting to take a look at the Unreal Engine 5 results. All right, I had a night of sleep and the game has not been patched. Here's the Arc A750, so we can test that out. Looks like we are at 1080p, no upscaling at this point. I'm not seeing XeSS in the menu. Looks like I'm just seeing FSR2 available there. And I've got everything on the ultra settings. Let's go ahead and take a look at how we do. Looks like we're right under 30 FPS, looking out at that big overview kind of scene running through here. Looks like we're in the 30s and low 40s. Let's see how we do coming up out of here. Swing around. Yeah, looks like we're going to be kind of in the upper to mid 30s on this little benchmark run. And then we'll take a look at what we could do. So about 38 at 1080p Ultra for that run. Let's go ahead and take a look at upscaling. Looks like I'll have to use FSR2 Quality. I'm disappointed not to see XeSS here because I do tend to think it can have better image quality. Are you guys noticing artifacting right there kind of on the sun? Do you guys see those little black spots? Was that there when we had FSR off? That's interesting. Well, let's see here. Turn that back off for a second. I think it's gone now, right? So, does not seem like that particular scene on this particular card when using FSR2 was liking that. And look, it's back when I kick FSR2 back on. Well, that's unfortunate. Anyway, let's still take a look at the performance numbers here. So running through this same kind of area, 1080p Ultra with FSR2 enabled. Looks like we're kind of in the upper mid 40 FPS range a lot of the time. Crashed. All right. Not the game crashed, I just ran into a wall. Because I'm staring at a frame rate counter instead of where I am running. All right, looks like by the end of that, we're up around 49 frames per second. Again, weird artifacting going on that. All right, let's go ahead and kick FSR2 back off and then bump the resolution up to 1440p right there. Let that kick in for a second. And let's go ahead and try out 1440p Ultra. Looks like we're gonna be below 30 frames per second. Also looks like I'm losing my monitor image there for a second. All right, let's run around here. Oh yeah, we're dropping down into the low 20s. Think I even saw us, yeah, 1% lows are looking like 18. So we're definitely not doing 1440p Ultra native resolution on this particular graphics card. Again, these are down to about $200 last time I checked, so certainly the most affordable graphics card we're looking at here. But yeah, it doesn't look like 1440p Ultra is going to be the experience that we're looking for. Let's look at FSR2 Quality before we change the graphics settings down to low. Yeah, it looks like at 1440p, I'm still seeing that kind of artifacting there with those little black dots kind of in the sun. All right, running around here, looks like we're definitely getting some drops below 30. The 1% lows are looking at about 22 right now. But the average looks like it's going to be a little bit over 30. But again, I highly doubt this is the most demanding area of the game. Was that a weird shadow artifact thing going on here as I passed through there too? That was kind of weird. Anyway, let's go ahead and test out low settings. So once again, I'll switch down to low and restart the game off camera and be right back. Okay, we're now at low settings, and that looks like I'm seeing that artifacting again, those little black spots under the sun. Was I just missing that on the other GPUs, or was that not there? I don't know. Oh, FSR2 Quality's kicked on. Never mind. Let me turn that off. Okay. So I had not turned that off yet. Yeah, so it looks like the black spots are gone. So yeah, it still seems to be showing those artifacts when FSR2 Quality is enabled on the Arc A750. We're now at 1080p native resolution. We got that FSR turned off, and I will show you I have slid everything down to the left, so low or off. And let's go ahead and get some benchmark numbers. It's looking like we're below 60 FPS though. So 1080p low settings, yeah, kind of looking like upper 40s, low 50s. Certainly playable, especially if you have a variable refresh rate display to kind of smooth things out and not get screen tearing. Again, you'll see screen tearing in this video because I'm recording on a 60 FPS capture card. So of course we'll be out of sync with that. But anyway, here we are. Yeah, averaged about 52 FPS at 1080p low settings. So it does look like to hit 60 FPS on the A750 at 1080p, you will actually have to upscale. So I can kick on FSR2 Quality. Looks like we are now over 60 frames per second, at least right here, but I'm getting that artifacting, which is unfortunate. It would be nice if we would get some kind of a XeSS patch here maybe, or get some sort of update to improve that compatibility. looks like we are, yeah, averaging right around 60 FPS now. Looks like it'll be a little over it by the time I get back to the top of the stairs. So yeah, it's looking like 1080p low settings will require quality upscaling to hit 60 FPS on the Arc A750. And it's unfortunate that we're seeing some of those graphical glitches when doing that. Let's go up to, wait, did that skip over? There's 1440p. Seems like it was in the wrong direction in the menu. Seems like you would go to the right there, but whatever. Here we are at 1440p. We can go ahead and kick upscaling off for the moment. So low settings, 1440p, Arc A750, no upscaling. Let's go. Now, one nice thing about the Arc cards is that usually they scale up to higher resolutions a little bit more gracefully than some of the other GPUs and other brands. That doesn't necessarily mean they have the horsepower to get you a great experience there, but they tend to not fall off as much performance as you scale up the resolution. Anyway, here we're looking like averaging about 39. Let's see if we hit 40 by the top of the stairs. Yeah, about 40 FPS when we are using low settings at 1440p native. And let's go ahead and kick on FSR2 quality. Yeah, seeing that artifacting under the sun again. That's unfortunate, but let's see what happens to the performance. Looks like we are not going to be hitting a 60 FPS experience there. We just got a big stutter on the frame time graph. That was interesting as well. Looks like we're reporting over 8 gigabytes of VRAM. I've noticed on the Intel GPUs, when they report to my stat counter, even if they don't have more than 8 gigabytes, they'll still report that memory usage, and we would assume that the rest is spilling over into system RAM. That behavior is a little bit different than we see on the AMD and NVIDIA GPUs, the way they report that stat, though. Looks pretty close to 8 gigabytes, though. All right, yeah, it looks like to hit 60 FPS at 1440p would probably require more aggressive upscaling, maybe going down to the balance setting. Looks like we're still not quite to 60. Maybe we would be by the end of the run. Yeah, that's a little bit unfortunate. So looking like if you're wanting to lock 60, it's definitely going to be a bit rough. Even going down to the performance setting here does not seem to be hitting us to lock 60 FPS. So yeah, it looks like we're just not, I mean, we can get close here, but it's just not wanting it, even at FSR2 performance upscaling, to quite get there. All right, now I am refreshed in the morning now. I think we're gonna take a look at one last GPU. I wanna look at the GTX 1060 and see how an older mid-range card does. Is it gonna be playable at all? Well, this is the trusty old GTX 1060, and sure enough, 1080p. I'm not even gonna try the ultra settings because we're already on the lowest of everything. And yeah, we're definitely down well below 30 frames per second at 1080p resolution, showing you that 1080p, no upscaling yet. So I mean, let's give it a quick run at native 1080p low, but it is certainly looking like the 1060 is not even going to be able to do a locked 30 frames per second. In fact, we're pretty far from it down here in the 20s, mid-20s. Yeah, so okay, we're definitely going to require some upscaling to try to play this game on the GTX 1060. And let's just see how bad the upscaling's going to have to be. Let's try out FSR quality. Is that going to get us 30 FPS? Actually, that did quite a bit there. Was that actually just the quality setting? Let me just double check there. Yeah, we are on the quality setting. So that did seem to help us out significantly. Let me go ahead and do a run here now. Okay, definitely have the 1% lows still dipping below 30, but the averages are definitely more in the 30s range. And so I think if you did want to play the game and just turn everything down to low and upscale, you could at least, I think, play the game. Now I'm also curious how CPUs from this generation would handle it, but I'm just not gonna have that much time for the video, guys. I'm also curious, actually let's go ahead and kick FSR2 to performance mode. So low settings, 1080p, FSR2 performance, things are looking a little pixelated out there. Let's just see if we're going for nothing but performance. We don't care how pixelated our upscaling looks. We got all the low settings. Can we hit 60 FPS? It's looking like the answer is a resounding no. So it's not looking like anything you can do in the graphics menu is going to get you a 60 frames per second experience on a GTX 1060. Getting a few stutters there as I run around as well. Okay, I think I've got to start editing this video or I'm not gonna make it to work on time. So we're gonna leave it at that. I wish I could have tested out more GPUs. I wish I could have tested out different CPU setups, all of that. Getting that same kind of artifacting on the sun here, actually, with FSR2 enabled that we saw on the Arc GPU. I don't think I remember seeing that on the AMD GPUs. Interesting. Anyway, I gotta leave it at that, though, guys. Have an excellent day.